Hey guys, good morning from Odessa, Ukraine. It's finally like a little spring in the air here. Just a bit chilly, but very nice. So I'm a little bit tired today and I just want to talk to you about that. So you're probably thinking I was like up late, working on a sermon, studying my Bible, being all spiritual, but yeah, that wasn't exactly the case, to tell you the truth. So anyway, here's what happened. We put the kids to bed, well, later than usual. Probably it was like almost 11 o'clock by the time they got into bed. And then Christine and I started getting ready for bed. But somehow after we got ready for bed, YouTube came on. And you know how that works. You can easily get lost in the land of YouTube. And so we watched about an hour of this actually it was America's Funniest Home Videos that was on YouTube. My goodness, it was so funny. We laughed like my stomach hurt. I was laughing so hard. So in that sense, it was like, yeah, it was a good time to laugh, and you kind of need that sometimes. But it was just too late when we actually finally went to sleep. And I find that this is a big problem for me, and I think for other missionaries. And yes, sometimes it's ministry, sometimes it's just not getting the rest we need, but we often don't get the rest we need for different reasons. I think that sometimes too we use ministry as an excuse not to get the rest that we need, like, oh, I'm so busy with ministry that I can't get more than like 5 or 6 hours of sleep. And honestly, it's a really bad excuse. And I think it's a bad excuse for a couple of reasons. One reason is because it's just not true. Like, we waste our time doing other things, and then we say that it's ministry. That's the reason why we don't get the rest we need. And the other reason is because it's not necessary 90% of the time. I mean, yes, there was a time when Jesus stayed up all night praying. So there are limited certain times when we have to forsake our rest to do our spiritual duty. But more often than not, God wants us to get our rest, and He gives us opportunity to get our rest. And it's the decisions that we make that keep us from getting the rest that God really wants us to get. And here's another factor too. Sometimes I think that as ministers, as people in the ministry, or as missionaries, we can use a lack of getting rest as sort of like a spiritual badge. Like, oh, I'm so committed to the ministry, I'm so committed to the Lord, I'm so spiritual that I don't have time to get the rest I need. Okay, so here's the way I look at it. If Jesus specifically designed us to get, 7, 8 hours of sleep at night, to rest for one full day a week, if we don't do that, then there's a problem. There's a problem with us. And I think the problem comes down to three main things. By the way, think about Jesus' life and his ministry. If Jesus could get the rest that he needed, if he could take the time to sleep when he needed to sleep, except for, extreme circumstances, there was the night in the garden when he didn't sleep. So I understand there are some occasional extreme circumstances where our spiritual duty, the ministry, takes us away from sleeping. But honestly, I think that those things are more rare than we would like to admit. So there are some of those situations, but mainly we see Jesus getting rest. We see him getting away from the people, getting spiritual rest and physical rest. And so I think it comes down to three main things. One is just being undisciplined, like I was last night, just like not utilizing the time and resources that God has given us wisely. Number two is simply not trusting God. And what I mean by that is I think that the whole design, the way God gave us the Sabbath rest and even a night and a day and a nighttime to rest, was part of the aspect of that is trusting God to take care of things when we are not doing things. And so one of the reasons why we don't rest is because we're not trusting that, God is in control. He'll take care of these things. And we think, okay, I have to do this. I have to do that. If I don't do it, it's not going to get done. If it doesn't get done, then everything's going to fall apart. And the reality is that sometimes things fall apart, not because we keep working and working and working when we should be resting, but because we don't get the rest we need. And we end up the quality of what we're doing, our attitude, it affects everything when we don't get the rest we need. It goes downhill. And then things fall apart. Things fall apart, first of all, spiritually in our own lives. So when we don't trust God, that tends to lead us to not getting the rest we need, because as we rest and we stop doing the work, we have to trust that God is in control. And then the third thing is just sort of a spiritual arrogance, a spiritual pride of, like I said, this is sort of my badge of spirituality, how I show people how committed I am to the church, how committed I am to God, how committed I am to the ministry, how disciplined I am, that I only get 5 or 6 hours of sleep at night because I'm busy doing the work of ministry. And obviously that's a negative thing. So we have to come back to, and I have to come back to, this idea that God wants me to get a regular, healthy amount of rest. He wants me to be disciplined with my time, get the rest that I need. And over the long run, what happens is you find out that you are able to do much more in the ministry. You are much more stable emotionally, spiritually, when you're rested. I mean, so many times I've come home, I've just been tired, and it's just like everything just gets negative. Everything, you get depressed, you get disappointed, discouraged, and it's all just because you're tired and you need some rest. I remember my mom always used to tell me, go to bed, it'll all look better in the morning. And that's just like a really simple but very true fact, that when we get our rest, we are able to see the world more clearly the way that God wants us to see the world. So my encouragement for you, don't believe the lie that you have to sacrifice your sleep daily in order to do the ministry. Get your rest, take your Sabbaths, and take your vacations, because God meant you to live that way. Okay guys, enough preaching to myself. Now I actually have to get to work, and I'll talk to you a little bit later. Alright guys, work day is over, heading home, and going to rest a little bit with the family this evening.